Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your host, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we travel north to northern Kentucky to Augusta Distillery, a Kentucky bourbon company. Yes, it's virtual, but you're going to get a great conversation as we have Master Distiller Alex Castle joining us tonight. So sit back and buckle into the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. Alex, thank you for joining Scott and I this evening to talk all things Augusta, and you've gotten to laugh at my imperfections of recording the intro. So thanks for getting through that. Luckily, it was only one time, right?
Hey, that's not bad, man. Second take, you got it.
Exactly. Celebrate the little things. We were just talking about that beforehand.
Big accomplishment.
It is. Scott knows. Sometimes it takes 5, 10, 15 times.
Oh God, I
No.
hope not.
Thanks y'all for having me.
Oh, of course. We're excited to have you. It's been a long time coming. I know we've been trying to get there. We're going to make that happen eventually. But due time, your team was nice enough to send us a variety of samples. And we are like, we need to talk about this with the team other than just, put out content. So we're excited to dive into that. But there's a lot of stuff we got to get to before we talk about the whiskey in particular. And that one thing I think is really important is, you know, you've transitioned from Memphis, Tennessee to Northern Kentucky. So for you, Alex, for people who don't know, what's it like making this transition to the bourbon heartland here in Kentucky?
It's it's coming home. Really the transition to Memphis was probably the more difficult challenge. I'm Kentucky born and bred, and so moving to Tennessee and being asked to make Tennessee whiskey, that was the challenge for me. Getting back to, come to Augusta, come back to Northern Kentucky. I grew up 35 miles from where the distillery is. So I grew up in Kentucky bourbon world. And so it's been a fun transition. But it's been a very natural transition.
No, it's great, and I'm glad to have you back. We always love when we take something away from Tennessee and bring it back to Kentucky. As a Kentucky alumni, we get to play those Vols again this weekend. Hopefully, for the third time,
Yeah.
we can beat them.
Oh, we'll see how that goes.
We will. My happiness on Friday will depend a lot on that. So I will pour probably some more Augusta to enjoy that. Hopefully victory, and if not, sorrows.
Cheers to that.
Yeah, it is March Madness, so a lot can happen. Our brackets, Scott and I are not doing well in our Bourbon Lens
Oh,
bracket challenge. So
mine is done. It's
Yeah,
out the window. And I started off strong and I'm done.
yeah, it can it
yeah.
can go it can go bad real quick. But
Yep.
you know that's why they call it madness because it is maddening for everyone.
100%.
So for those people who don't know, right, you're back and you're at I don't know. I feel like it's a bootstrapped, kind of thing with Augusta. I don't know the story very well, so I'm excited to learn a little bit more today. I've seen him at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival and tried the whiskey in the strolls of summer, and you don't get the best impression of what you have to offer. You know it's good, but you don't know much other than that, and you drink enough where you kind of forget all the things that you might have learned while you stopped at the distillery booth. So, can you just share a little bit about Augusta and what you all are trying to create there in Northern Kentucky?
Absolutely. So our brand and our story kind of date back to about 2018. Some college buddies came together and decided to start a distillery brand. And one of them has deep ties to Augusta, grew up here, his family's from here. Um, and he and his wife had actually saved a building from demolition, historic building that was built in 1904 and was in continuous operation until 2008, was ready to be demolished by the city because no one wanted to salvage the building. It had asbestos and all this other stuff that cost a lot of money to remediate. And so he and his wife said, too bad, we're going to buy it and we're going to save it. Saved it. They decided to start Augusta Distillery. And around that time is when our president also comes into the picture, and he is someone who invested in some bourbon barrels when none of us
Hmm.
actually thought that was a thing. And so that's how he kind of came into the picture. Um, and really what got us on the map for most people was in 2023. Really, it was 2022 we launched Buckner 13. It was our first product release. And in 2023, it was named Bourbon of the World at San Francisco. And so suddenly here we are, a brand with, a crazy, crazy achievement. Just really getting started. We had just started welcoming people to the distillery for our thieving experience. Shortly thereafter, introduced Old Route 8, our 8-year-old. We introduced Buckner 10, our 10-year-old. But essentially, what we are as a brand is Kentucky Straight Bourbon. And we like to say it's bourbon uncompromised. And by that, we mean that we do not blend at all. We are single cask, single barrel. That is it. We do not dilute. So everything we do is cask strength. It is unfiltered. And on top of that, we don't do anything under 8 years old. So we drew a pretty hard line in the sand
Yeah.
in the early days of our brand. And that is where we stand today and where we intend to stand for the life of the brand. And we think that that provides an ultra premium product, ultra premium experience. And if you come to the distillery and do a production tour or thieving experience, we hope you feel that when you come on site.
Yeah, I mean, those barrels that we were talking about that you just laid down, they're gonna go take a long nap.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
not going to be coming out anytime soon. But I think that's what's nice is you hit the ground running, right? You hit the ground with a team kind of assembled, and you were like, let's crank it out. And so over the last 9 months, 8 months, you've cranked out nearly 2,000 barrels. That's got to be some hoofing on your all's part.
There definitely was a lot of hustling on everyone's part. A lot of long hours, late nights. Our president was in the trenches with us in getting the equipment commissioned. He was running around asking me what valves to open, what valves to close, that type of stuff. It was all, full team effort. And I think it's paid off. We've really hit our stride and hit over 2,000 barrels really in less than 6 months. And about to hit 24/7, which, I wasn't sure I'd ever end up back at a production facility that was doing 24/7. That was from years and years ago. I was at Wild Turkey, and here I am again, about to be on call all the time.
Yeah.
You are now a very important person, and when anything goes wrong, you're probably gonna get that phone call.
Oh, absolutely.
What? Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
No, I was gonna say, what's the meme? It's like I became very important at work, and now I'm kind of worried. It's like the alarm bells go off at 2 a.m. because a sensor trips at the distillery, and
Yep.
you're making a call or you're making a short drive over, and that's you. So, yeah, no, I think that's they hire. I've never seen somebody get hired for a role and have a press release, but then also there's a press release that goes out for somebody when they're leaving a role. I mean, pretty much saying like, thank you for the 10 years of building a brand. And so I mean, clearly there's you know a lot of capability there, and a lot of people respect your capabilities. So I think it's pretty cool that Augusta has thrown you into the fire and said, here you go.
I appreciate that. Yeah, they definitely threw me in the fire, but I also may have jumped. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, at least you didn't do it by yourself, right? You had your team, and
Yep.
you had some, your people, and you got back home, right? And there's always niceties where when you're familiar with the place, right? So it does make it a little bit easier from a transition perspective. And speaking of transition, this is always something I think that is very unique, right? Your team has been able to purchase many barrels, and luckily, I think we're in the golden age of purchasing for folks like yourself, right? Where there's been a lot of
Absolutely.
great production. And so you can get barrels at a really good price, and you can continue to replicate the 8 and 10 year products, which are your shelf staples. But do you think and project out, right? In 8 to 10 years, can we mimic or create something similar to what our people, like to have? Or will it be its own separate line item and it's, going to be, your own distillate with a different name and different brand? Have you all thought that far ahead? Because, you know, 7 years, 7.5 years will be here before I know it.
Yeah, so we think the brands as they are will continue on. That's the current concept. Um, but we also fully acknowledge that's 8 years. Um, so anything could happen to the existing brands, to the market, um, to where, we know nothing is currently set in stone. Um, we're very, very happy with the distillate and think it's going to get us where we want it to be in 8 years. But again, those barrels, we can only control so much what happens in them. Um, to where we'll see kind of, what kind of pivot may need to happen, because that's how it's a pivot. Like, we know it's gonna be great. We're very excited for what happens in 8 years. Um, but we also know there are a lot of unknowns and even to an extent some uncontrollables that happen in that 8 years. So we're prepared to pivot
Hmm.
as needed. But right now we're thinking Old Route 8 and
Hmm.
Buckners. They will be the product lines that we are fitting into when our distillate is ready.
That's cool. I appreciate that, right? I'd like, and you all can make a big deal about your own whiskey and when it's out, I'm sure there'll be some type of fun naming convention that goes along with it, right?
Yeah.
But could be new Route 8, right? Instead of old Route 8. See, I'm marketing genius. Just call me when you need extra help.
That would require them to build a new road because that's
That
why it's named Old Route 8.
See maybe I'm not a marketing genius because I don't know Northern Kentucky that well, but I do think people get familiar with something when they continue to go buy a product. And if they go and they're always reaching for old Route 8 off the shelf, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, Augusta's got this other thing, and it's very similar. Why can't I just grab the same bottle with the same naming convention, right? So I think that's always one of the things that I think about is from a consumer standpoint, I want to, you know, uh, reach responsibly first and foremost, but also be able to reach for the thing that I want to call for every time, if that's my house drink or house bourbon or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
I like the idea. I know 8 years is a far time from now. Obviously, we've heard at nauseum over the last 3 months how the world is going to change. But 3 months is a lot shorter period of time than 8 years. So we'll see a couple more shifts and everything before
Oh
that
gosh, who
comes
knows
around.
what we'll see in those 8 years.
Yeah. Now, are you
Yeah.
all going to try to match the mash bills that you have currently in those, or are you going to did you create your own unique mash bill?
We're doing a different mash bill. So everything we do, the stuff that we source to the stuff that we make is all fairly similar. We do favor a higher corn content. So we're always in the 70%, 70% and up on corn. Currently, everything we put out and what we produce on site are rye, not wheated. So that we do tend to favor that
Hmm.
profile as well. And those even are typically, I think our rye ranges anywhere from 10 to 20%
Okay.
total across the board. So while we deviate, it's not a huge deviation.
Hmm.
So what we make on site is 75% corn, 20% rye, and then 5% malted barley. And then all of our source stuff is not horribly off the mark from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's nice, right? You have a profile that you're trying
Yep.
to create from, and then that allows you to make what's best of what people are used to, and then put your own spin on it, right? Because
Yep.
if you follow the single cask strength, nothing under 8 years, that barrel's gonna have a lot of influence, and you just right, you've done this for a long time, good in, good out.
Yep.
crap in, crap out, right? So if you know that that mash bill is going to work, then good in, good out. And so I think
Yep.
that's the nice thing is if you're happy with the white dog going in, you're going to be happy with the bourbon on the back end.
And that's where we are with it. And for me, I'm excited because we have a traditional rick house, and
Mm,
it's been almost a decade since I've dealt with a rick house because we were palletized in Memphis, and so we've got a 7-story rick house. I can't wait to start learning that rick house, right? And seeing, ooh, first floor, northwest quadrant gives us
mm,
this. But then you get to the third floor, northeast, and you get this. And to see what the warehouse does to our
hmm.
barrels and really figuring out how to let the barrel shine. Because as a single barrel company, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
It comes down to the barrel.
Kind of harkens back to your wild turkey days and the Russell's approach. You know,
A little bit.
let's find those honey holes in the rick house.
Yep.
Got
Yeah,
Yep.
it.
and it seems to be coming out of one place at Wild Turkey these days. um, and I'm like, can we move to a different rick house in a different area, please? That's an aside, but it seems like they're single
Lord
rick
knows
houses.
they have enough brick houses. Come on.
I know.
Yeah.
Come on, Eddie, get to moving. Um, but I think that that'll be fun, right? To get back and experience, you know, the crow's nest versus the bottom floor. How does that do? That brings to me to an interesting question, right? In a palletized warehouse, you can move things around, right? And if you're going for that long age, right, what happens with those barrels that sit up there? If they go 10, 11 years, will you rotate them? Will you bring them down? Like, what's your thought process on that from a maturation perspective?
So I never thought I would rotate barrels, right? The whole old school mindset is you put the barrel in, don't waste the labor on moving them around. But since we've hit it to nothing under 8 years old, that top floor is going to cook those barrels so
Mm.
fast that I think we don't have a choice. I think we're going to have to rotate. And
Mm,
really, because that's something I've never done. I'm kind of excited to start figuring out and learning. Okay, this floor stay on this floor for X amount of time. Now move here, and then move
yeah.
there. So it's a new challenge at this point in my career, and I'm kind of excited to take it on, see what happens.
Well, and also you'll because you're a single barrel or a single cask company, every barrel or every bottle will be able to have that story of, it spent 6 years in the highest part, and then we
Yep,
brought it down and really nurtured it for that last two or,
yep.
4 or even longer, that
And
last period.
and
Yeah.
we've decided to put sensors throughout the warehouse.
Mm,
Um, that is monitoring temperature, humidity, even ethanol in the air, and I think a couple other data points. And so the idea is that we will be able to, at least for the quadrant, ideally we want to get to where there's a sensor on every barrel. We'll see if that happens. But we'll be able to tell you exactly what that barrel experienced over the
hmm.
course of its 8 years, even as we move it around the warehouse.
The barrel nerds rejoice.
Right?
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the things that we can't do right now. We just know it goes in the barrel. There's chemical reactions, right, between the alcohol and the charred wood and toasted wood, whatever, however you do your barrels.
Yep.
And then voila, at some point down the road, it is Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. Um, and I think these are the data points, right? As you think about um I think about David Mandel and John Hargrove, what they were doing at Whiskey House, right? With that smart rick house that they built.
Yep.
Um, how can they make that affordable to you? Because we know the most expensive part is the barrel up front, right? Like that is the cost and the commitment that you only get to use it once, unless you magically say, hey, we're just going to do once used American oak, American single malt, which you could do, right?
Yep.
Like you could play around with that, but you got to produce a lot of bourbon before you even think about these other side projects. Um, and so that's the thing. Like if you deck out these barrels, with the appropriate sensors and tools, if you only get to use it once, like that's not awesome for you all from a cost perspective either.
Exactly. And that's why currently in the warehouse, it's just quadrants within the warehouse that have the sensors. Hopefully the technology catches up and we can get to where it's per barrel, but until then, it's really hard to justify that expense. To your
Hmm.
point, it's a one-off. I don't get to use that sensor again.
Yeah. Those are the things that make me think about, um, how can we start to uncover the mystery? The uncover the mystery is really hard because it's incredibly inefficient on the bourbon production side. That we only use the barrel once. But that's what makes it the gold standard of spirits across the world, right? So I think it's a catch 22.
It is 100% a catch-22. Because I actually was just talking to people recently at the Bean Conference. It it's amazing how unsustainable our industry is once you get to that barrel, because it's, an 80-plus-year-old oak tree that yields, I don't know, 3 to 4 barrels, and then that barrel gets used once, and then we're done with it. But
Mm,
if you were to argue in changing that, then you just changed what bourbon is. And bourbon is so iconic at this point. We all kind of know the, basic flavor profile. If you say
Hmm.
bourbon, we all kind of have similar thoughts on what that tastes like. You can't go changing that because
yeah,
it's the identity of the spirit.
yeah. I mean, it would be very interesting to see a wave of a American whiskey, like the just once used
Mhm.
barrel. But it just seems like the American whiskeys I've tried just miss the mark on what you come to expect as a whiskey drinker or a bourbon drinker, right? Like if you go into the mentality of this is Scotch or this is Japanese whiskey or Australian whiskey or Indian, pick your region or whatever. Um, that's what you expect, but you don't expect that of American whiskey. So or some people white whiskey may catch on. I don't think so. My personal opinion, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it very interesting, and this is a perplexing conversation to me that I feel like I have to sit down and have a drink to think about more because I'm just like yammering on about like
I I mean, part of it is
I
because
don't
what
know.
is American whiskey, right? It's kind of a broad description. Just like saying Scotch. Scotch isn't fair because they do have the different regions. Um, Now, granted, most people go to super peaty and that's the automatic,
Yeah.
default. But, American whiskey, what is your thought on that? Especially as we just introduced American single malt, but we're also really known for rye whiskey. So that I think that's what makes the concept of American whiskey so difficult is where do you even begin with that
Yeah.
association? And Lord knows that's years and years of education on the consumer part to adapt and adopt the concept of
Hmm.
American whiskey, should it ever take hold.
Well, and
Yeah.
bourbon feeds a lot of its competitors, right?
Yes.
Bourbon
Yeah.
is a lifeline for
Scotch.
Scotch, and I mean rum and you know
Tequila.
tequila. Yeah, casks get used many, many times. So it's like, yes, there
Yep.
are a lot of inefficiencies and issues with sustainability,
But
but
we we pass it on.
there are a lot of opportunities to make sure that those casks don't just go to the wayside and end up in a scrap pile to be burned or
Yep.
whatever. Um,
100%.
fortunately, there's people that still cooper barrels and can ensure that they last for 100 years,
Yep.
Hmm.
however long.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
Well, I think it's also interesting is a lot of times now these barrels are coming back full circle for a finishing cask, right? Like
Yes.
you've gone, if you have a relationship and it goes to tequila, then you're going to do a tequila cask finish. Or if it goes to rum, which I'm more of a fan of than a tequila cask, do a rum finish. Or, it goes and does a sherry route and comes back. I think that is the fun thing. Can you tell the story for the long haul? So could you create a sustainable relationship, right, with the sensor that says,
Hmm.
hey, PX people over there, oh gosh, I'm gonna sound stupid. I think Sherry's French. Um, I think I got that right. Uh,
Yeah.
and so,
It's Australian. It's
uh,
everything. No.
something east of me, because I'm in Kentucky. It's east. Some country east of me who makes sherry. You have a relationship with them and say, I want those second fill sherry butts back, or those
Right.
American whiskey back, and then that could be fun, right? But
Yep.
global commerce. I mean, we're closer connected than we've ever been before, right? So I think that's the other interesting thing as well. How to create those relationships. We're solving like economic issues right now, and I'm here for
It's
it.
getting deep. It's
It
getting real
is.
deep.
It's
We
getting
don't
really
ever
deep.
we don't ever think this hard on the
Alex was like, I'm
podcast.
ready to talk about distillate and real nerdy stuff. And now we're talking about economics
No,
and
no, this is good. I'm actually about to fly to DC actually for a conference and a legislative fly-in. So I'm actually about to meet with our, senators and congressmen to talk about
is that part of
various
Discus?
things. It is discuss,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That lineup this year looks actually really, really interesting. Scott signed us up for the newsletter, so I get to read all this stuff as it comes through.
Oh yeah,
But
the Discus new. Yeah.
the newsletter is
Very,
great, and I think the conference
very
looks
insightful.
really good because we think of sometimes the purview so small, like Kentucky or American, but like they have such a purview outside of that, and where you can
Yes.
see and trends and thoughts. I think it's really, if you're not signed up for the Discus newsletter, you're missing out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
To talk about the scope of it, my first experience with discus was 2019.
mm,
Um, Distillers, specifically craft distillers from across the country, flew into DC for a legislative fly-in because we were advocating for a permanently reduced federal excise tax.
yeah.
And I forget how many distillers flew in that week, but it was insane to see the volume of people that took over Capitol Hill as
Yeah.
we met with representatives from, I think, almost all 50 states to get our taxes permanently reduced. And so that was an eye-opening experience for me, and that's what led me to continue my advocacy for the
hmm
industry.
Well, and that was, I mean, we don't think about that, but I mean, that was a huge deal not too long ago to help
Mass.
the craft distiller, keep their doors open
Yeah.
because it was a go for broke play for a while.
We were looking at a 400% tax increase if we didn't make it permanently reduced, which would have devastated the craft industry. And of course, we didn't know it at the time, but that was 2019. It was permanently, we were still fighting it really in 2020, just kind of kept getting extended. So imagine a 400% tax increase in the middle of the pandemic.
Mm,
That would have
Yeah.
just would have killed our industry.
it would have. And, considering like that was the time where, Americans spent nearly $1 billion more on beverage alcohol than they ever have before.
Yep.
Yes. And
It
that was
was it was
$1 billion.
it was for the antiseptic purposes.
It was,
The more you drank, the less COVID.
exactly. The great philosopher Nick Miller from New Girl once said, rubbing alcohol for the outside, drinking alcohol for the inside. And I use that quote. People get sick in the house. I literally go downstairs and I find the highest proof bourbon I have or whiskey, and I'm just like, we're just gonna drink a few glasses of this and we'll be all right.
Is that why
I mean,
Robitussin has all the alcohol in it?
Oh gosh, Robotessin's rough.
that is rough.
Oh, I'm like drinking nice whiskey over here. I'm getting a lot of flavors, and you say Robitussin, and my mouth just like creates that flavor, and I'm just like, that
Gag
is
reflex.
terrible.
Just
Not enough water in the world.
mix in a little NyQuil. Good to go.
Yeah.
Ugh, yeah,
Man.
yuck. But this has really been interesting because I'm going to go back to the one thing you said. So in your old Dominic days, I'm sure you blended, right? And I'm sure you created whatever profile. Do you think this uniquely cask strength barrel proof thing is going to be here to stay? Your opinion, not Augusta. Like, or do you think eventually you'll need to have something at 100 proof or less for the average consumer. Like I'm just that's a very interesting point to stand on. We didn't hit on it, but like Scott and I would say, we need 100 proof bourbon, a uniquely 100 proof bourbon. So I'm just interested in your thought as being someone who has blended, has had product below, 100 proof before, and to have this like really everything we've been sipping on tonight is 115 or higher, which is warm for Scott and I.
It is warm, absolutely. I honestly, I think there is a niche for it. I think there is a spot in the market where cask strength, all single barrel can live.
Mm,
And the thing I like about cask strength specifically is basically we're handing the reins to you, the consumer. If
yeah.
I proof down a bourbon, I'm telling you how to enjoy it, how to drink it. I hand you a cask strength, and maybe there's a little dropper bottle of water next to it, and also a little bowl of ice next to it. You get to decide how you want to enjoy it. Because once I add
Mm,
the water, you can't undo it. But by talking to you and teaching you different ways of experiencing the bourbon, you then get to decide what's best for you and how you most enjoy it.
mm.
Kind of a create your own adventure.
I don't think about that enough, to be honest, because I think of pour it, drink it.
Let's be honest, we're all lazy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, you are creating your own cocktail in a sense, right? Like that's what a venue would say. By adding water or ice, you've created a cocktail.
Mhm.
Um, but I think would be interesting as someone who I think does the things a little bit nerdier is, what does a drop typically do, right? What's that dilution point? How many proof points does that come down? Because I think people are just like, oh, like, if they have a water dropper, let me squeeze a whole tube in there. Well,
Right.
boy, you just went from 115 to 90 maybe in your glass. So like,
Yeah.
what's that equivalent? How can someone at home understand that besides having like the tool that reads the proof point, which would be an expensive investment. I'm sure some
Yeah,
enthusiast has
don't go
done
that
that.
route.
But just that would be curious to me as like, hey, if we had 130 proof bourbon, if we added a drop of water and a water dropper, what would be that equivalent? That would be a cool thing for people just to understand.
There, I mean, I could give you a calculation to run.
All right, he's got a pen ready. He's ready to go.
I'm ready, right? Right
I
now.
just don't know if people drinking bourbon at home want to get that granular, but basically what you can do is, we're telling you the concentration to begin with. If you want to measure your pour and know that you poured 50 milliliters into your glass at that concentration, say you add, and this is you'd have to measure it, but 2 drops is equal to, I don't know, we'll call it 5 milliliters. So
Mm.
suddenly your volume is now at 55 milliliters.
Hmm.
The equation is C1, concentration 1 times volume 1 is equal to concentration 2 times volume 2. And you'd be solving for concentration 2.
Hey, we're gonna
All
put
right.
this in there and we're gonna
So
make people do math. And there's gonna be a giveaway for the person who goes home and does the equation. And I need them to record it and send it back to us because I need pen and paper. This is a show your work type of giveaway here.
I'm sure there is some website, some
Nope.
app that would just do it for you.
I need long form
Chat
pen and
GPT,
paper.
right?
Yeah, we need true arithmetic here.
Exactly.
Yeah, show your work, kid.
Show your work. You can
That's
get
what
half
I.
points for this.
Oh, I was about
People.
to say no partial credit, but okay, that's
No,
fair.
always partial credit. That's why you make them do your work so you can get partial credit. I was a kid that I would get the right answer, but my work would be wrong.
Mm,
So you cheated? You got
because
the
the
right answer from
calculator was
someone
right.
else?
No. So like very, very clearly. So like I knew the shortcut in calculus. right? Like around the exponents and the derivative, like the derivative quick
Yep.
fix. And like if you didn't put it the long way down, you got like a half point. And so like I still, me and my calculus teacher in college, like if I could throw down with one person, it'd be him, just because like he docked me like, I don't know, 10 points off my grade. It was different between an A and a B because like I just did the derivative equation like just really quickly versus like showing it long form. I was like, I'm tired. I ain't got time for this. Like, accept my answer, my man. Yeah, so that's the one person that I would want to throw fisticuffs with is my
Your
um
calculus.
my college calculus teacher.
I somehow avoided calculus altogether.
Oh,
And
I wish I had.
I was actually good in math, but I just decided I was done with math and I did not do any advanced maths. So
That's fair. You know how much calculus I use?
Zero.
apparently you use a
Zero.
lot of algebra though.
Basic arithmetic.
Yeah.
Solve for X.
Yeah.
Done.
I feel like those are weeding out classes for engineers.
Yes.
You got to take calculus
100.
1500? Yeah, you do. Good luck.
Not me.
Yeah.
Yep.
Many days at the Willie T Library with my buddy Clay, who also played football with me, and he was a mechanical engineer and just ripping calculus equations. And I'm like,
No.
2 pages to get one answer. I'm like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is stupid.
The amount of paper I wasted on calculus homework was insane.
It was a plot from all the pencil manufacturers and all the paper,
It was.
you
It
know,
was. But
paper.
you know what solves all these issues? A great pour of bourbon. And I would say Augusta Distillery has some great bourbon. Their core lineup is the Old Route 8 and the Buckner's 10-year. There's limited editions that show up from time to time. There's the 15. There was the 17. You may be able to find that meandering somewhere out in the world. Um, but
Happy
you know,
hunting.
happy hunting, exactly, always. Um, Alex, going from craft to craft with age, right? And this is what I'll say with this one. You know, where would you tend to lean someone if they wanted to go try Augusta first? What would you recommend them trying if they came into the distillery, or if they were to pick a bottle up at their local, I don't know, let's say Party Source there in Northern Kentucky, and grab a bottle? Where would you tell them to go?
I I probably would have them go to the Old Route 8. Um, but would especially if they're not really into bourbon yet, so maybe they're a little hesitant. Old Route 8 makes a fantastic old fashioned, and if you're trying to get into bourbon and really acclimate your palate, I find, a bourbon cocktail is a great way to do that. Um, because you do get to taste the bourbon, but it's softened by those other ingredients. Um, but yeah, I would send them to the Old Route 8, but Buckner's 10 is also a great pour as well.
Yeah, Scott, we've sipped through a few of these in the back end. What would your recommendation be?
Yeah, so I'd actually had the old Route 8 previously, and I liked it because it was my style. It's like high corn. You still taste the corn even at 8 years. But it's got that sweetness that is what I'm looking for in a bourbon, frankly. So in this one, I'm assuming, yeah, I'm assuming it's nowhere near the same barrel that I had previously had, but 115 proof, still has a ton of body. I've added a couple drops of water, and that sweetness just kind of elevates as well.
Mhm.
Um, the Buckner's 10 has a lot more like, to me, like a lot more like fruit notes. Like, I don't know, it's kind of like jammy, like
Mm,
strawberry jam or like cherries or macerated cherries or something like that. But I think they're both good. I did add a little water because they were my first pours of the night, and we all know I'm a wuss and like my 100 proof bourbons. But um, yeah, but I mean these aren't unreasonably high either. You know, they're not 140 proof, which
yeah.
I think some people just go up on the scales just to see how far they can go, which ugh, that's heartburn for me.
It's like hot ones for bourbon.
Yeah, yeah. What's their scale? Like they do the Scoville scale, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
gosh.
Blow your face off. So I will say the 10's pretty damn good. If you can find one, if you can find barrel 155, I recommend that one because that's what we had. Um, but if you're feeling froggy and you want to be in the ultra premium category and you can find barrel 13 at 15 years, wild. That is, I've never had something quite like this that gave me blackberry lemon custard on the nose. So
Well,
it's
that
a
just sounds delicious.
it does. It was a very very interesting, but definitely enjoyed it. Just like we enjoyed this conversation with you, Alex, tonight. So
Mm.
we really appreciate you hanging out with us, and look forward to coming up to the distillery in the near future. But really appreciate it again, and we'll catch everybody next time. Cheers.
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 Thanks, Alex.